Hello, my name is John Didi, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local media political analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am talking with Doni Glover, a local entrepreneur and media star who covers the community in an excellent way that is very informative. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, John Didi.
Glad to have you aboard. My first question, and I always like to ask people these types of questions for people who are viewing kind of for the first time and all this. You're very noted in the Baltimore community. How did you get your start? What led to your journey of the success you've had today?
Started with the Sandtown Winchester Viewpoint newspaper back in 1994. I was the co-editor and eventually became the editor. A young lady named Valerie trained me. At the same time, I was a sophomore at Coppin in the media program under Professor Ron Nichols. So between having a job as a newspaper person and then going to school for media, 93 to 96 up at Coppin State, that's where it all started. Well, officially.
Officially, unofficially, it's all good. The one thing I want to ask you about is you've been doing a lot of work recently related to Black Wall Street. And I grew up in the suburbs of Western New York, and there was a lot of things we never knew about and I didn't know about what happened in Tulsa till about 10 years ago. This happened in 1919. It had never been talked about in any classes, never in any type of conversation. As I dove into that, it was fascinating and scary at the same time. What needs to be done to help promote more of Black Wall Street? Because I feel at times that one of the things a lot of communities sometimes lack are positive role models. And to see success is something that in entrepreneurship can really make a difference for a lot of people.
So the year was actually 1921, and that's my book. I wrote that. It came out in the 100th year since the 100th year commemorating the destruction of Tulsa. I learned the story officially, I would say 2011, and that's when we started doing the Black Wall Street Awards. I realized that I grew up on Black Wall Street. I realized that Black Wall Street wasn't just in Tulsa. Yes, Tulsa's massacre, the destruction of 36 blocks of Black-owned businesses, some say approximately 600, that was horrible. But it also pointed out that there were many instances of self-determination efforts in the Black community that have been lost or swept under the rug or forgotten. I mean, the man who first landed in, back then it was Indian territory. Before it was Oklahoma, was Chief John Horse. So this was 1843. That's when the first so-called blacks moved from Florida on the Trail of Tears out there to Indian territory. So they weren't slaves. They were actually those who fought in the Second Seminole War, which is really an insurrection, if you will. But be that as it may, Oklahoma, the guy, Chief John Horse, he led the way. When he got out to Oklahoma, or then Indian territory, they didn't like it. They still ran into slavers. They still ran into warring native tribes. So they left and went through Texas, building black towns all the way into Nacimiento, Mexico. So East Texas alone, you talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma actually has 70 to 80, or had 70 to 80 black towns. East Texas had 500, according to one researcher in Texas.
That's really fascinating. For a lot of people, I feel it's very educational to know about these things because, as I said before, a lot of times various cultures don't know about their own stuff and other cultures don't know. And I will kind of share this with you. I have found when I invite guest speakers to my college, the speakers that get the best reaction, that are attended best, are African American leaders in the community. I've had Kai Jackson, I have had Brandon Scott, I've had Ivan Bates speak, and those people draw a crowd and people pay attention to them. And I think that that's very important in our society to bring leaders like that out to people to see the positive role models they are and what they're doing for the community.
Well, that's the role of black media. I'm not sure if you're aware, but over the past 2 weeks, two historic newspapers have closed their doors. One in Portland, Oregon, the Scanner, and another in Richmond, Virginia, the Richmond Free Press. And these, no, the Free Press has been around since the early 90s. The Scanner, I think, may go back farther, but it's further. It's it's a huge loss when such institutions have to close their doors. Here in Baltimore, uh, I'm not sure that any one newspaper can cover all of the stories that are out there, mainstream or otherwise. So it is important to have these voices. And when you look at what's happening with digital media and the whole innovative disruption that's happening, the onset of new technologies, the game has changed and will never go back.
You in that respect because I started doing this stuff a year ago because I've had to go on a Trump diet. It felt so overwhelming, all the stuff going on. So I started focusing on local and state government and things like that because I wanted to still be involved in politics and still be able to teach my classes, but I needed to kind of get away from that. And I want you to kind of what is your thoughts recently about this? I don't know if conflict is the right word, but this rattling of the cage President Trump is doing towards Governor Moore, and in many ways creating more conflict than what needs to be.
Politics. I don't know that the governor is expected to fight on the same level. You're going against the president. He has more resources. He controls federal dollars that come to the state. Um, sure, the governor has to stand up. He has to represent himself, his state, the Democratic Party. But at the end of the day, we you got to get the work done, despite the parameters. I know one thing that I've paid attention to in particular is the DBE program being rolled back, and how it's caused a disruption in other areas, including minority business enterprise. There's some businesses, some black businesses that really rely on such opportunities. But now there's this reverse trend where white guys are suing and saying they're being discriminated against. So, it'd be nice to get back to some normalcy.
You I liked how you talked about the getting back to normalcy because I think everyone thought in 2021 that was happening, and then political leaders didn't follow through with certain things they should have done in 2021 and kind of looked to power more than they didn't care who was in charge as long as they had power. And I think a lot of the actions become disturbing. Let me ask it this way, just be very direct about it. Do you think racism is worse now than it's been do you, at any time over the last maybe 30, 40 years? Because it seems more prevalent now than I've ever seen.
Like race is the misnomer. I've seen a beautiful woman of different races attract men not of their race. So is it really racism?
That is a deep thought. That is really
I mean,
deep.
say a white guy hates black people,
Yeah.
but a beautiful woman who happens to be black changes all of that. So is it really hate? I don't think it's hate.
What do you think it is?
It's not hate. Because if that white guy wants to have sex with that black woman, race has obviously gone out the window. I think it's part fear. I think it's part envy. I think it's part fear of what will others do given the position of power that I have. What will they do to me if they have that same position? I think that's part of it. And then I think another part is just good old American entitlement and also a lack of knowledge. Because if we understood history properly, who could be mad at black people who have fought for this country, helped save this country? I mean, you look at the Revolutionary War, going back to the First Rhode Island Regiment. Some who would argue that they helped tip that war. You could look at the Civil War, or you could look at our fights in the World Wars, the Fighting Tigers, the Harlem Hellfighters, the Buffalo Soldiers. Who could hate a group of people who have fought and died as well as anyone for America?
Tuskegee Airmen, who were really World War II heroes in many ways, for all that they did, and they kind of put the power structure kind of put them in a situation. We're giving you kind of the short end of the stick as far as the types of that they had very dangerous missions. And a lot of people don't realize it wasn't just this group of pilots who was flying. It was that they had more dangerous things than some other groups.
So is that hate? Do I hate a people who have helped fight for the country I live in and for the freedoms, who have invented countless important items that we all use? That's got to be more like misinformation, because if I knew that you did all of these things to help make my life better, to hate you would just be stupid. And then you look at money. I don't want to take your money because you're a person of a different skin. That's stupid. It's it's nothing intelligent about it. So it's got to be fear or envy or a low self-esteem. Because when you feel good about yourself, you can feel, you're more apt to feel good about others.
You
And
got
I
a
want to
point.
see everybody win. We're in a country, let's be honest, Mr. Didi, we're in a country where we live better than most people around the world. We got running water, electricity, heat, no bombs dropping. We've really got it good. We don't realize how good we've got it. All of us.
That's a really good point. I mean, and I think a lot of people, when I think about these types of topics, I thought kind of when Obama became president, a lot of things would get a little bit better on race relations. But I think in the end, what it really showed is people decided how they really felt about things. And we do have it good in this, we do have it good in this country. And I think a lot of people don't take sometimes the appreciation for the good things we have.
We have to learn to get along together. What I think racism is, it's a farce, because the real struggle in America is really between the ultra rich and everybody else. That's what I see the real war as. When you see ICE running down on everyday white people as police have run down on everyday black people like Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, etc. And now the story gets told of how vicious American policing has gotten. Then you realize, what do we have in common? We all probably are under 100,000 or a million a year.
You make a good
Are
point.
you a multimillionaire, Mr. Didi?
I aspire, but I'm not even close.
Okay, so we're more in the same boat than, say, some of the wealthy elites who get to influence policy because they do have that wealth. I mean, that's the real struggle in America, from what I see.
You make a good point. There was something I was thinking of when you talked about this, and maybe it's the point for a lot of Americans. The one thing that upsets them recently is the Epstein file situation because they said not just what these people did, but they were rich, white, powerful elites with the money to have NDAs. And I think this is where you're starting to see more people, but whether you're a partisan Democrat or partisan Republican, the one thing everyone wants to know is who are these awful human beings, and they want them brought to justice.
Well, people voted for this president knowing that. And so what does it say about us?
I think if I was given a thought on that, I would say people, when you talk about voting for your pocketbook, I think a lot of people voted for, hey, it will be better. People had COVID amnesia. And I think for a lot of people, it's like they will forgive all these terrible things as long as their pockets are lined with money and they're financially well to do.
It says who we are.
You know, no one discriminates against the color green, I tell people.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned before I wanted to talk about a little bit is you talked about hate and love. And I remember a quote Clarence Page once said, "What hate groups need is love." And I always thought that was one of those moments at that moment when I heard him say this over 30 years ago, my head tilted back for a second. I said, that's the answer because no one is born with prejudice. It is a learned trait through a variety of things that people see and experience and hear in their lives.
Well, what comes to mind is Stevie Wonder's Love's in Need of a Holiday. That song, Love's in Need of Love Today.
Stevie Wonder, great writer and great artist, and sometimes it's music that can give those powerful messages on a variety of things, and that's why I'm a kind of a big fan of a variety of different types of music because of messages they sang. Whether it's the song from the late '60s, Abraham, Martin, and John, which was done, and a variety of other things, just historically it told stories.
Well, there's a new storytelling today, I can tell you that.
I agree. Let me ask you this kind of conclude some stuff on things. What are your thoughts about the current political situation we have in Maryland in 2026? You could touch on any topic related to that. And where do you think we are nationally now with everything in 2026 with Trump and all that?
Like at the end of the day, the governor is, as you well know, he'll cruise into reelection. Obviously, his sights are on something bigger, obviously, the White House. I think he just has to bide his time and keep swinging, keep being who he set out to be, who he started off being, keeping that, everybody changes. Everybody evolves once they've been in a seat. So, we're looking to see what his second term would look like if he can keep that energy, keep that bite. Uh, I wouldn't waste too much time fighting a president who has more resources. I'd focus on the here and now.
Yeah, I often use the expression as far as dealing with Trump. You have to remember, don't poke the bear
Yeah,
because there's a lot of bad things he could do. Final
yeah.
question I'll ask is, what do you think about how things are going with the city of Baltimore in general, with uh, Brandon Scott as mayor and with Ivan Bates as state's attorney? How do you think they're performing and what they're doing as far as for the community?
That question you want to ask John.
Well,
Well,
basically
do
what
you
I'm,
want to know who would win in a head-up fight between Brandon and Ivan for mayor?
you know what? I I'll give you my thoughts on the inner fight. I don't. It's like two chefs competing, doing two different things to serve one great meal. Each is approaching things in a different way. You can debate what you like or don't like, but as long as the crime rate is down, I say hallelujah. I'm happy about that.
Well, I've lived in this city 58 of my 60 years. I remember when O'Malley was in, they said crime was down. And I've heard it recently with this mayor that crime is down. I saw crime down with Sheila. I talked to police officers. I was raised in the funeral industry. I am frequent, I frequent these streets, East Baltimore, West Baltimore, the county, Prince George's. I don't know about crime being down. Things have changed. The game has changed. I'm seeing some promise. I can't erase a Penn North drug overdose. I can't erase that. I can't unsee that. I can't unsee the response at the time and where Penn North is now. I'm I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that I see the reversal. Now, the Arts Social Club, which has been there over 100 years, or they have over 100-year history, I see a new marquee up there. And believe it or not, uh, that brings a certain life to Penn North. I actually visited Penn North uh, Drug Center, drug rehab, right there next to in the same block as Art Social, and they are still in there servicing people. And what I'm getting to, and I know that Senator Hayes is and the governor have sent 50 million to West North Avenue to a NADA thing. I am seeing some progress. I do like what I see on West North Avenue with David Bramble, and I got to tell you, I'm excited that somebody has finally stepped up to do something about the harbor, which had been laying there dormant. Uh, in terms of Brandon and Ivan, Brandon is the king right now, and as long as he stays cleaner than Caesar's wife, he won't have any problems. Not sure what he wants to do next. We've heard Congress. I've heard Congress for Senator Antonio Hayes. We know, I would imagine that Ivan would like being mayor of Baltimore. But then there's also, Zeke Cohen laying in the back. And then, for the state of Maryland, there's Brooke Learman laying in the back.
That's the fun thing about politics. So many different possible scenarios and chess pieces. And it just takes one person to drop a basketball on the chessboard to disrupt everything.
Well, I tell you, in Maryland, no one came with the media game that Wes Moore came with. He came with probably the best media game, including digital, that I have seen in quite some time. Great job.
I would agree. I want to thank you again for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it a great deal. I thank you for the education you've given me today.
Oh, you've given me the education, Professor.
Okay. Well, we'll agree we've educated each other. Thank you again, and good luck in your media work. I appreciate it a great deal.
Thank you, Professor.